Next up on Cooking Class for the Working Class, a culinary classic dinner for two, flambéed steak Diane. Hey there, I'm Chef John, and I'm a real-life working professional chef. And this is Cooking Class for the Working Class, Culinary 101. Today's feature is a romantic dinner for two, a culinary classic, a flambéed steak Diane, and a feature we call Epicurean Romance, Culinary Classics Retro.
Hello everyone, this is Chef John, and welcome to another edition of Cooking Class for the Working Class. Now in today's episode, I'm going to twist things up a little bit and do what I'm going to call an Epicurean Romance. That's going to be a dinner which is done for two people, and it's typically done tableside. It's a classic flambé dish of filet mignon with mushrooms and a Dijon mustard demi-glace. And that's going to be served for two people. And without any further ado, let's get this show on the road. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is organize our mise en place, which translates literally to everything in its place. It's one of the French culinary terms. So the number one priority about cooking is we have to remember is timing, because timing is everything when it comes to the culinary world. So the first part of this dish that we need to get rolling is the roasted red potatoes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just prep those up, and I'm going to season them, and I'm going to get them in the oven because they probably take about the longest time to cook of all. And all they're going to do is just be seasoned with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, some cracked black pepper, a little bit of garlic, and they're going to be roasted off in the oven, and they're just going to be absolutely delicious. So when you're working with the potatoes, one thing you want to do is while you're prepping them and cutting them is to keep them in a little bit of water. So by keeping them in the water, that keeps them from turning brown. And you know, it keeps them from oxidizing basically. And this way you could actually cut these ahead of time if you wanted to. One of my triple T's, my tips, tricks, and time savers, is a lot of this stuff can be done ahead of time, but for the sake of the video and the class, I try to do everything as we go along here. So you can see that cooking really doesn't take a whole lot of time to prepare a great meal for two people. So all I'm doing is just cutting these in half. And again, these could roast off whole if you wanted them to. For time's sake, number one, I just want to cut them in half, but also for my presentation. Because as we all know, presentation is everything. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drain these off now. And this is also one last rinse of some of that extra starch. I'm going to put them in just a little bit of a dish, a little stainless steel bowl here. And as promised, a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Okay. A little bit of kosher salt. I always use kosher salt. It's just a more natural salt. Okay. And a little bit of cracked black pepper. Actually, a lot of cracked black pepper. And then we're just going to kind of toss those around a little bit in that oil so they all get nice and coated. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is put those out on a baking pan. And this is a non-stick baking pan. What I like to do is make sure that they're really well coated with the oil. So every little tiny bit needs to have some of the oil on it, because the oil is going to be what cooks them evenly. Now we're going to spread those out. Okay. And finally, I always like to use a little bit of granulated garlic. And for those of you who are new to my video, I always like to introduce our birds. We have two macaws. One's name is Jazz, the other is Coral. So living here in Florida, you might very well hear my birds every now and then during the videos, so enjoy. Anyway, this is ready to pop in the oven, so let's go on over to the oven. All right, so I've turned the oven on to 375. So let's just pop these right in the oven, and we'll close it right on up. And I'm going to set the timer on these for about 15 minutes, because number one, we don't want to overcook them. We don't like to overcook anything. So we're going to check it in about 15 minutes. And I think that's going to be plenty of time, because again, these are really small potatoes, no pun intended, and they cook really quick. And we just want them to get nice and brown and full of flavor with all the seasoning on it, and we're going to enjoy these like you can't imagine. Okay, so now we're going to prepare the tenderloin, which we're going to just slice into what are called medallions, and then we're just going to press them out a little bit. What we do that for is we're not trying to tenderize a tenderloin, we're just trying to quicken up or speed up the cooking time. Because don't forget, this dish is typically done table side, so there are no ovens to flash anything into to heat them up a little bit further. So one thing I did want to point out though is the fact that when you're dealing with the prime USDA filet mignon, look at the marbling that's in this. Now this is how you really decipher whether you're getting a true prime filet or choice, and this has to do greatly with the levels of grading that the US government does. So take a look, all that marbling that's going on and all that fat that's going through there, that really just helps to absolutely make the meat just melt in your mouth. Okay, now all I'm going to do is, like I said, is cut these into medallions, and then that way we're going to be able to flatten them out a little bit. So if you've seen my other videos, I really like to cover the cutting board up with a little bit of plastic wrap for it if I'm working with raw meats. I do that just because I'm really a fanatic about cross-contamination, and this is just one more safeguard that I can assure that we're being sanitary. So I got these cut out, and we're going to be cooking about half a pound of meat per person, about 8-ounce portion, between 7 and 8 ounce portion. Now you really don't want to eat much more than that at one shot. So these pieces here, we're going to be able to actually get another meal out of. So I'm going to set these aside, and we'll come back to these later. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just flatten these out a little bit with my hand. And again, now I have the plastic wrap here. It kind of makes things easier. I could just cover them up. This way, again, I'm not handling the meat too much with my bare hands, or, I'm just trying to do one more sanitary thing to not breed any kind of cross-contamination or foodborne illness. So big, very important. And especially when cooking at home, you want to do everything the right way. All right, now you see how I just kind of flatten those out? Now they're ready to go. They're ready to be seasoned and put right into a hot pan. So these are going to be a little bit trickier now. And again, we're not trying to tenderize, we're just trying to flatten these out a little bit. So again, what I did is put them cut side or the flat side down on the cutting board. And I'm going to just kind of push them down to maintain that look of the filet mignon. Okay, just flatten them out is all I'm doing here. And that's all they need. It's not like we're trying to tenderize here. So look at that. Now we've got 2 portions of beautiful prime, USDA prime filet mignon that we're going to turn into steak Diane. Okay, so next up, we're going to season these and get these into a hot pan. All right, so next on the agenda, I've already washed off these baby portobello mushrooms, so we're going to get these prepped and ready to go. And all we're going to be doing with these is just slicing them, and these are going to be sauteed in the hot saute pan. And I like to cut these a little bit thicker. Now, previous video I showed that I kind of like to slice the stems a little bit first. And I like to go ahead and use the stems. Many people choose not to. They just cut those off, throw those away. But this is still part of the vegetable. And I just think that, it's not the perfect, beautiful button shape that we have up here. But I'm going to cut these up ahead of time. And that also allows the mushroom to kind of sit flat. All right, by sitting flat, that's going to enable us to go ahead and slice it real nice and uniform. And again, we're not trying for any perfection here. We're cooking at home. We're having fun. And all we're trying to do is keep the cuts uniform. All right, when I mean that, you take the mushroom, and these mushrooms going into this dish, I like to keep them slightly thicker than I normally would for some kind of a fast saute, because these are also going to cook into a sauce. So I'm going to cut those slightly thicker than I normally would, because I want to be able to taste that mushroom, and it needs to be able to stand up next to that filet mignon, you know, that's in the hot sauce, okay? Because these are going to cook down, and if you slice them too thin, they just kind of really cook away and get lost. So again, we're going for uniformity, not for speed. We're not cooking for a culinary competition. Although, by the end of these videos, you'll be ready to compete in any culinary competition. Okay, so here we go. We got the mushrooms prepped. All right. Next on the agenda, let's go ahead and get our shallot ready. Some say shallot, some say shallot, some say tomato, some say tomato. I do by habit, force of habit, call it shallot. My wife makes fun of me every single time I say it to her, but after 22 years of marriage, I haven't changed it, nor has she. So what I'm doing is just peeling that. You can see it's got a slightly purple or reddish color to it. And again, this is like a baby onion, but it's a very, very strong onion. And because it's an onion, we're going to cut it just like an onion. All right, the way we do that, cut it in half. Take the French knife, and we're going to cut little slices in it. Okay, do both sides, little slices, holding it with our fingers, and then we're going to slice it this way. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and dice it. And this we're going to actually chop up into a mince. Okay, same deal here. And we're going to dice that. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and mince it up. You know, mince is this is considered a fine dice, but we want that to almost it's going to flavor the sauce and flavor the entire dish, but it's not going to be like the mushroom where we want that to be a big component or one of the main pieces of the dish. So we're going to chop it up, not quite to a mince, but it's going to be very, very finely chopped. And that's going to cook very quickly in the pan. It's going to add all the flavor that we need. Okay. And we're just about there. This is looking really good. Okay. Next thing we're going to prep after this is our asparagus spears. And today, like I said, we're roasting the potatoes. Potatoes are in the oven cooking away. We're also going to roast the asparagus. Now, some people steam asparagus all the time, all day long, and there's nothing wrong with that. It all depends on how you like to eat your vegetables. I really like to try to cook in its most natural form. And when I say that, all I'm doing is seasoning it, putting a little olive oil on it, and that's going to go into a hot oven, and all we're doing is just lightly blanching it. And when you see the finished product, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. So we got our mushrooms, we've got our shallots. Now we're going to do a little red pepper. And I'm just going to cut this, and we're really only utilizing the pepper today to add a little bit of color, a little bit of texture to the dish. And this is going to go with our asparagus. So we're going to be a little bit more precise with this cut. We're going to do a julienne. So I'm going to take these bottom pieces of bell pepper, and these get saved. We never throw anything away. So these peppers are going to be used. They could be diced up, put into an omelet. Okay, so I'm trimming out a little bit of that membrane out of the pepper. And now this is arguable. You know, you can keep these pepper trimmings here. I keep everything, especially if you're into vegetables, really heavy, vegetarian, or even just like to eat healthy. You could chop up these little membranes here, and that can go into an omelet, or it could go into a sauce, or you know, you could actually just kind of crunch on it as well. So now that I've got this trimmed with the membrane, I'm just going to cut these into a julienne. All right, Now you see we have a nice uniform shape to the pepper before we're even cutting it. Okay? Now, if you've done it right, look at the uniformity of these peppers. Now, peppers, again, it's going to add a nice, sweet, crunchy variation to the asparagus, as well as some beautiful, brilliant color. So I'm going to put these right on the plate here. Okay? Now let's get that asparagus ready to fly. And again, I always use my paper towels. I'm a paper towel fanatic. Again, I just like the idea that I could throw it away. And each time I start with a nice sanitary wipe to clean up cutting boards. All right, so the fresh asparagus. Now, arguably, but I can tell you the classic way. Everybody sometimes says, Chef, how do I know where to cut the asparagus at? All right, what I like to do, which I've been trained classically, is how do you tell? You take your asparagus and you just kind of bend it, see, and pop. And where it pops, that's the section of the asparagus where the tender asparagus starts to meet the stringy stem part of the asparagus. So I'll do one more. Again, just take it from both ends and give it just a little bend. Pop, okay? And the thicker the asparagus, the farther down the stem it's going to go. So do I sit there and do I pop each single asparagus? No, not at all. I'm going to take the asparagus, but I am going to line them up though. And I'm going to use my largest one as a guide, okay? And I'm just going to cut and boom, there we go. Now, this part of the asparagus, and I go ahead and while I'm working with the cutting board and the asparagus, I go ahead and chop it up. Now you could put this in your freezer just like it is, because this will make an incredible asparagus soup. You could put that in a vegetable soup. And again, freeze it for when you're ready for it and use it up. But again, we're utilizing every single bit of the product as we go along. Scallions are going to use for just a little bit of flavor, but more importantly for the garnish, because presentation is what? Everything. So I've already rinsed off these scallions, so I'm just going to cut those ends off. Again, let's save those for a vegetable stock. And a couple things I'm going to do here. I'm going to take the green scallions and I'm going to cut those not quite all the way at the end of the green. I'm going to save a little bit of that, save some of the white and the green so you can see it. And we're going to come back to that. I'm going to show you a little tips, tricks, and time saver. Now I do like to cut the scallions on what's called the bias, or cut on an angle. It just gives another variation, a different cut to the dish, and just it's all about presentation, okay? So look at that, we've got beautiful sliced scallions now. Let's put those on the plate, we'll come back to that. Let's clean up. Okay, and I'll show you a little trick. Again, part of the tips, tricks, and time saving. We're going to put a little water in this dish. Okay, just a little bit of water. I'm going to grab an ice cube. Pop these in here. And we're going to take our knife and we're just going to cut some very small, not too deep cuts into the scallion. And not all the way through. Just cut it. I'm not putting the knife all the way down to the cutting board. I'm just kind of going through it about midway through the scallion. And we're going to come back to this and I'm going to show you what this ice water can do. Prepare to be amazed. Maybe not amazed, but it's kind of cool anyway. All right, so we're going to cut that, not all the way through. And this is also Culinary 101 here. This is real basic garnishing. I'm just going to kind of flatten those down in the ice water, and we'll come back to those in a little bit. Okay? All right, so now we've got our cremini or baby portobello mushrooms here ready to fly. We've got the shallots, we've got our fresh asparagus, our scallions, and our peppers. We've got our mustard. So now, without any further ado, let's get this show on the road. Okay, so first thing we do at all given times when we're cooking is, when you're cooking with a saute pan, that is put the pan on the fire, turn the fire on. So we're going to go ahead and heat these pans up because you cannot cook in a cold pan. Cold pans are just not happy. So what we do here is just turn it on. I could turn it on high first. All right, and you can see it's getting high. So you can't put anything into a pan that's cold, because what happens is, as you put the product into the pan and then it gets hot, it's going to have the product actually stick to the pan. Instead, if you heat the pan up and add a little bit of oil, you're creating a little bit of a border there, so that the meat is going to sear, but not sear to the pan. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit hot, and in the meantime, I'm going to bring over the fillets, and we're going to just season these up a little bit. Out, and there's our timer for our potatoes. Let's shut the timer off. And that pan's still on, so you have to be careful. We're just going to pull this pan out with the potatoes. And as you can see, they've taken on a real nice roasted color. And you can see that, the oil is actually just bubbling. It's all real beautiful and just screaming to be put on a dinner plate. All right, so that pan is still getting hot. So what I'm going to do now is season up these medallions of filet. And again, these really, there's so much flavor in this tenderloin. Particularly, don't forget, it's USDA prime. That fat, that marbleization that's in the tenderloin, that is the flavor. So all we're going to be doing is enhancing that flavor. And in doing that, doesn't need anything, just a little bit of kosher salt. I know everybody tries to watch their salt, so I always try to use kosher salt, number one. And also black pepper. And black pepper is all about your preference, how much you like. I like a lot of pepper. My wife likes a lot of pepper. So again, it's kosher salt and black pepper. And you don't want to put the salt or the pepper on too early. I'm going to turn the pan down just a little bit while I talk. Because you don't want to put any salt onto any raw meat before you're ready to cook it, because it's actually going to draw out the juices that are in that meat. And if you're not ready to cook it, you're going to wind up with a really dry, tough piece of meat. So don't season it at all until you're ready to put it in the pan. Unless, of course, you're going to marinate it if you're trying to tenderize the meat, but that's not the case. So I've got the salt and the black pepper on here. And the majority of the flavor is going to come right from the sauce. So I like to season both sides. All right. And this is really all the seasoning this is going to need. And one other component that we're going to be using here, which I didn't have in my mise en place in the very beginning, was the demi-glace sauce. Okay, this is a demi-glace. It's a reduction of beef or veal bones, and it's turned into a sauce just by the clear and sheer reduction of it. So if you don't have a demi-glace, if you don't have the time to reduce it, which guess what? Who does? And you're cooking at home, any kind of a really good quality brown gravy mix or something to that effect, a canned, a jar gravy, something that you're familiar with and you can use, that's going to work just fine for home. So now that this pan this is really hot. And how do we tell if it's hot? We're going to put our oil in the pan. And see that running around in the pan? Or I call it dancing around in the pan. That's how you tell this pan is hot. Okay? So, next thing we're going to do is go ahead and sear these off. And wait, listen. Can you hear it? Of course, that's the other way you can tell if your pan is hot. Now, I just shook them around so that they can get a little bit of cooking going on. But go ahead and let them sear. All right. So while they're searing, I'm going to get my bowl that I use for my potatoes that have my oil in it, And I'm going to just lightly coat the asparagus in it now. Okay? Got the fresh asparagus. I'm just going to kind of toss those around a little bit in that same oil. Okay? I'm actually going to rub these also and put these onto a pan. Oops, down coating these. Okay, so they got a nice coat on them. Put those down. Okay. Now I'm going to put the asparagus right on this pan, because now these are going to pop into the oven. And again, it's a hot oven. It's set at 375. I'm just going to put the rest of that oil on top of it. Alright, so first thing I'm also going to I'll go ahead and put my peppers in the oil also. I'm going to get ready and flip those medallions here. I'm going to put that on right on the baking pan. Let you see this. We're going to turn it over. Boom. Look at how seared that is and how beautiful that is. Now that's called steak. Alright? Now I like to get the oil underneath of the product, so I kind of shake them around a little bit and I move them around in the pan. Okay? And while that's searing, I'm going to season up the asparagus a little bit. Again, it's got the olive oil, it's got the pepper and a little bit of garlic. Going to hit a little bit more salt, touch more pepper, a lot more pepper. And I'm going to put a little bit more granulated garlic on that. Okay. Let's go ahead and put just a little bit more extra virgin olive oil. Okay. And we're going to pop that right into the hot oven. And wait till you see how quick this takes to cook. What we're doing is roasting it off. Alright, so we got a good sear here. Let's go ahead and set the timer for 5 minutes. We'll check the asparagus after 5 minutes. Alright? So now being sure to wash your plate. I've washed the plate. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my medallions back on the plate. And we're going to just hold those. Alright? Now the next step is to go ahead and put our mushrooms inside. I'm sorry, first we're going to put a little bit of the shallots. Listen, hear that? It's a culinary dream. We're going to add a touch more olive oil. I like to let those, they're going to turn a little translucent, but I'm also looking for a little bit of color. Just a little bit, see how quickly they turn brown in that hot oil? Now let's go ahead and put our mushrooms in there. Let's get that shaken around. Alright, we're going to let those cook for just a second or two. Now coming up is going to be part of the fun of this whole dish. We're going to flambe it. So again, this dish is traditionally served tableside, where the maitre d' would be cooking this right at the table. So that, hence the medallions. Touch those. See how nice and rare they are? Just a touch. There's an old trick, one of my tips, tricks, and time savers, is to use your hand. What we do, you hold your hand just kind of like relaxed state, and you touch your hand right here. See how soft that is? That's rare. Open up, medium way. That's medium. Open up all the way. That's well done. Medium, nice and soft, that's rare. That's an old trick. Some people laugh, as a matter of fact, most people laugh at me when I show them that trick. Alright, now these are starting to smell just unbelievable. I've got that flavor, you can see coming off the pan from where I seared the meat. So I'm going to add just a touch more olive oil, more salt and pepper. Doesn't need much now. We've already got the medallions already seasoned. Alright, so now what I'm going to do See that? You hear that? Sizzle? God, it smells so good. Alright, so now comes the fun part. And for the sake of the Epicurean romance experience, we're going to go ahead and turn the lights down a little bit. And you can see that. I'm going to add my brandy. Now, you do not want to cook this, add the flame or the brandy over the stove, okay? Notice I pulled the whole pan off the stove, okay? I pulled it away, added the brandy. I'm going to get that hot one more time. Hear it sizzling? And what happens is that brandy flames, and by flaming, it burns all the alcohol off, but man, it leaves that beautiful deglazed cognac, mushroom, pepper, steak flavors. So let's try it one more time. And guess what? You can try this at home. Now I call this series Epicurean Romance, and I'll tell you, by the time you learn how to cook like this with this dish, you will have some romance. Alright, so now let's turn the lights back up again. Now we're sizzling away there. Now we're going to go ahead and add the demi-glace to the dish. Alright. Now one other component that we're going to add to the dish is the heavy cream. So this dish now, I'm going to turn the fire down just a little bit. This dish as it is a very, very strong, savory, pungent flavor to it, because we've got the seared filet, we've got the deglazing going on from the brandy, we've got our timer going off for the asparagus. So let's take a look at that real quick. And look at this. Amazing. Look at the color this asparagus has. I wish you could smell the aromas coming for it. But I'm going to pop it back in for about another couple of minutes or so. Let's go ahead and put that in for another 5. So that's been 5 minutes so far. Alright, now another part of the ingredients. So again, like I was saying about the sauce, it's got this strong flavor to it. We're going to add a little bit of Dijon mustard. And I like a coarse ground Dijon mustard. It's just a preference. Okay, so this is now also going to add to that pungency or that strength of that flavor. Alright, and it's got a bite to it. You get, again, this is all about your preference, but as little as you like. Okay, I'm going to stir that in. Now, what we're going to do is take our heavy cream, and the heavy cream, when we add this to the dish, just add it slowly because we want to incorporate it. And you don't want it to sour or curdle or anything. So I'm adding it slowly so that it can temper its way into the sauce. A little bit at a time, and it's going to heat up with the sauce. Now see this whole sauce taking on a whole different color, a whole another flavor profile. And more importantly, now that we've got that strong flavor from the mustard, the strong flavor from the reduced brandy, now we're going to mellow all that with this heavy cream. Now look at that. Is that not beautiful? All right, we're going to taste for flavor, which I can guarantee you. Okay. Now, I'm getting so much flavor going on. I actually taste the roasted steak that's coming from the pan, the mushrooms, the sauce. I definitely taste the mustard, I'm sorry. And so I'm going to add just a little bit more heavy cream because I like it to be a little bit more subtle or a little bit more mellow than that. All right. Now I do like a lot of black pepper, so I'm going to put a little bit more black pepper in it. Does not need any more salt. Okay. Now all we have to do is take the medallions. That was our bird, by the way. Birds have a keen sense of smell, and they know when dinner's ready. I'm going to put the medallions right back in. And I take that juice that came off the steak and I put that right back in the pan also. All right, so now we've got dinner for two here. And all we're going to do is kind of turn these over. And these are going to heat up in the sauce. Now's the time you, particularly if you're table side, you can cook these a little longer if you like. Or you can serve them nice and rare like this. So all you're trying to do is just heat them. You've got the good sear on it, so now we've got a steak. So, and also when we seared the steak, we always sear the side that was cut. You don't sear the lengthy side. You always sear that flat side, because that's the side that was cut on the piece of meat. And that's going to lock in all the juices into that filet mignon. And this is, again, USDA prime. So this is going to be the most tender steak Diane that either myself or my wife has ever tried. All right, so now I'm going to just pull this off the fire. I'm going to turn the fire off. Okay. I'm going to pop the potatoes back in just to warm them up. And look at this asparagus. You can hear the sizzling. Okay. You can see the olive oil just cooking. And all we're doing is lightly blanching. That's all we're doing. That's all I'm trying to do is lightly blanch. I'm not trying to steam the tar out of it. Okay? Cooking is an art. All right? And treat the food with love. You treat the food with love, and believe me, you're going to love your food. All right, so those potatoes are getting hot. Now, the next step is the fun part, plating up. Okay, so as I promised, this is the fun part, the plating up. So first thing I'm going to do is take the roasted potatoes, and I'm going to bring those over. And I love to kind of make a little bit of a pile with the potatoes, because I like to have something to build on when I plate these up. And I'll show you why in a second, because what we'll do is have the filet cascading down the side of these potatoes. All right. And as I said, these are fresh out of the oven. They're just as tender as can be. And the Irish definitely comes out of me whenever I cook potatoes, because I love them so much. And it's all about presentation, okay? So keep your pile nice and neat, clean. Always stay within the rim of the plate, okay? We've got our USDA prime steak Diane, okay? And what we'll do is go ahead and have those coming off a little bit of the potato. And it's okay to have a little bit of that sauce drip down inside of that potato. Because guess what? A little bit more flavor is never going to hurt anybody. Alright? And these are cooked rare. But you can certainly cook them to your liking. My wife and I, we like our steaks rare. Now I'm going to take the sauce. And I always like to ladle the sauce. I don't like to just dump or just drizzle sauce. So I just like to keep it nice and neat and clean. Okay, you want to get some mushrooms in that first. So I'm distributing the mushrooms. Okay, look how good this looks. Now please, by all means, don't wait for Valentine's Day to do something romantic, a dinner for two like this. Anytime's a good time. Now look at that. Now we're going to finish the dish. Clean that up. If you're cooking this for someone special, you want to make sure they get the best of the best. I'm going to turn the plate just a little bit. And each person's going to get just a couple of asparagus spears coming off of that. If you keep the asparagus, keep the base skinny at the base and wider up top, they'll expand for you at the top. Okay, see what I'm trying to do there? Alright, so I'm just going to take some pepper. Let that fall naturally. Okay? So we've got all this seasoned flavor going on here. This is a fully nutritional meal, balanced carbohydrates, proper protein. And don't forget, earlier on I showed you that we've got a little bit of scallion for garnish. Take a little bit of that and just put that around the plate. A little extra color, a little extra pizzazz. Okay, it's looking good. Like the way it looks. Also, don't forget, as an extra added bonus, we take those scallion ends that we did earlier, and we've got ourselves a little flour going on onto that plate. Now, how's that Epicurean romance? So here we have our Epicurean romance. Our steak Diane, flambéed with brandy, cremini mushrooms, served with fresh roasted asparagus, some fresh red bell pepper, and there we have it. Good to go. I'm serving this dish with a Pinot Noir. You could certainly serve this with any kind of, I strongly recommend a red wine, any kind of wine you like, because guess what? Having wine with your meal is also all part of the fun. It's all about your taste. It has really nothing to do with, oh my God, I had red wine with chicken, the world's going to come to an end. It's what you like. So I recommend a Pinot Noir. This could certainly handle a Cabernet, or again, any of your favorite wines that you could choose from. And please enjoy yourselves, and thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, if you like this video, please click like, and subscribe to my page. And you can get premieres and upcoming videos and some live streams that we're going to be doing in the future. Okay, enjoy. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Cooking Class for the Working Class. Hope you all enjoyed it. Until next time, eat healthy, be well, and God bless.